waiting for Vijay to get online and connect with us. There you are, Mr. Vijay Benegal.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Did you haircut on your own, or did you go out, slink out, and get a haircut done?
Yeah. So it was driving me crazy. So my hair had become long. I keep it like this all the time. So I took my beard trimmer, and I just
trimmed the head, thinking it's a lot of beard. So, good evening, guys. This is a 31 degrees sultry afternoon in Bombay today, and it feels like, I believe they tell me it feels like 39 degrees, 74% humidity, and the sun will set at 7:10, 10 minutes after we start this conversation. So, in this time of the COVID lockdown, everybody's at home, and I hope we are all making the best of it and staying safe. Maharashtra is not doing too well in terms of the COVID patients who are testing positive. Numbers are going up every day. We don't know how long the lockdown is going to extend to, but whatever happens, I hope we keep you informed, we keep you entertained, we keep you just up to date on things that we can. And for that reason, we have these DAC conversations. And we have with us Mr. Vijay Benegal. We प्यार से हम उसको Mr. Benny बुलाते हैं. और Vijay has been working as a live sound engineer, as a studio sound engineer, and he's done the jingle circuit. So he's actually been into most of the stuff that audio engineers do. So what we are going to do is just have a chat with him, and people can ask questions, and at the end of the time, and we'll see. And of course, there's a prize for the best question, so that should be some incentive. So to just get things started, Vijay, I just wanted you to connect the dots for me between MBA, cooped programming, putty top, 20th century, which has nothing to do with audio, but like there is a line there, there is a connect there, there's a thread there. What the hell happened there?
First of all, KJ, hi. Thanks for having me on this. Great to chat. Great to see you. I mean, I've not seen you for I don't know how long.
All engineers are like that. We don't see each other. We talk to each other, but we hardly see each other because we are all in our own quarantine, so to speak, already. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So to answer that question, it's a quite a mixed up bag. It's kind of started I have to say, it probably started when I was in college. So our good friend Shantanu Hudlikar, he was a batchmate of mine in college. I was in Xavier. And we used to spend hours and hours just listening to music. I mean, we used to just put on a record, vinyl records in those days, and we would listen to them over and over again, and we would learn all the parts, the drums, the guitars, the bass. That was just passion. Okay, that was just our.
Right.
Then anyway, so to move ahead, we graduated from college. Straight from college, I joined a software firm. I got into, that was coding software. Started off as a trainee and etc. At some point, my boss suggested that I should, instead of doing a master's in computer science, I should go for an MBA. I said, okay, let's go for it. So I did that. And at the time when I left from Bombay, I was doing a freelance software job at an animation house. So I was actually writing some image processing software, really interesting stuff. Wow. And just before leaving, the guy, my employer, saying to me, why are you going? Come on, you got a job. You love doing this. We are having a great time. But, I said, no, I've committed to my parents and etc. So I went. Came back. In the year that post coming back, I jumped 3 jobs. The last job I had was with TCS. It was terrible. I was really unhappy. And I used to spend every single bit of any free time that I could ever find in the studio. At that point in time, Shantanu was running Music Room.
Music Room, that's right. Yeah.
And my brother's band, then they were known as Rock Machine. Today they're called Indiscreet.
Right.
They were recording their second album. So I knew everybody, right? So I just
Right.
hang out in the studio. And of course, post the recording, we would go out for a drink. I must have been and bitching a lot about my, how I'm sick for this job, I hate it, and this and that. And one day Shantanu says to me, man, we we could use another engineer in the studio. I think you got it.
Right.
That's when this great big loud bell rang in my head. I can't believe it never occurred to me that I could be doing this job. I
Doing
said,
this
sign
job.
me up now.
Wow.
So it took me a couple of. So I joined 2 weeks later, 1st of
Okay.
November 1990. I remember the date very clearly.
1990. Basically, Chandru just said, stop bitching and just join.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what he did. Cool. So there is now, from what I understand, there is this entire journey. So your brother is the famous Vijay Benegal from Rock Machine. So music was already there in the house, like in the sense, since he was playing in a band, so he was already playing guitar. Do you play any instrument?
I fool around on the guitar a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't play as such. I mean, if you and I get together for a drink, I might sing a song for you, but not for general consumption.
Not for general consumption. Okay. So then music has been there in your family. You are exposed to music, and in college you said you've been listening to music. So that is forming that subconscious bed for what you are about to do later on. Officially, that's what's happening. Uh, Log out and then we log in again. So guys, all of you, can you just join back? Okay. So here we go. Vijay will log out and log in again.
Hello,
Just, you're back.
are we back?
Nothing like a good restart.
Always reboot. When
Reboot. When in doubt, reboot. Okay. So tell me, we were back at, we are trying to get your teeth cut by figuring out what were you doing,
well,
learning the craft.
I was busy trying to avoid the dentist, but so my dentist was actually Shantanu Hudlikar. So
Okay.
I started there at Music Room with him, right?
Right.
I should say that, like, actually, it probably started a little bit before. All those days I was hanging out in the studio when they were
Uh-huh.
recording. I used to I was in the corner just watching what's going on. I never asked anybody
Right.
questions. I would just watch the whole process of what they were doing, and all bunch of mad people, and
Right.
so it was great fun. I mean, I learned so much just by sitting in the corner and watching.
All right. Hassan is there as well. Eid Mubarak, everybody. Kenny, is it better for you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I moved to the other side of the.
So did I. So we both moved.
Yeah, so I was saying that, like, those few days. I mean, those days that I was hanging out in the studio while the guy, I was sitting in a corner and watching what was going on. I was only observing. I didn't ask anybody questions as to why and what and
Okay.
how and all that.
Right.
I learned so much just by doing that. Then finally, when they got down to mixing, Shantanu got me also involved in operating the tape machine. By the time I actually started assisting him, I had been trained. So he didn't have to tell me, okay,
True.
I need that aux cable, I need a DI. I already knew all that stuff. It was a very smooth transition into this work. And it was mind blowing. I can't tell you how much fun I had. I had so little money, but it's
So
just
Benny,
so much.
we all had very little money when we started. Some of us even have less money even now, but we are still working. Uh, Benny, a question is, I think most youngsters would also like to know is that when you are starting out, and what is the approach? I mean, you said you were watching and you were paying attention. So what happens? Do you kind of first figure out how the song comes together, or do you need to first work out the faders or a balance, or first you go for maybe doing some EQ, and how does it work? What do you start with? Like, how do you get it? How does that happen for you?
Are you talking about for the newcomer, or are you talking
No,
about?
no, for you. How did you pick it up? Like, what was your approach? How did you pick it up just by watching? How did you pick up that process?
No, it was just to see. Okay, fine. Okay, now I'm seeing. Okay, like now they've got to do a guitar part. So
Right,
the process that is involved. Guitar player working on his sound. He's connecting the amplifier. You're putting up a microphone.
right,
I'm watching what Shant's doing at the other end. How are we getting the sound? Then I'm standing in the corner watching. He's twiddling some knobs, and I can console, and that tells me, okay, that's what's supposed to be an EQ, and so just like a little bit of observation. Time, look, as was as the as the recording was progressing,
okay,
in stages it was not all one shot, so they were overdubbing parts. So for me, it came together just as pretty much holistically, I would have to say, because I was paying attention. Everything
we lost you there, Benny.
kind of came together at the same, all at once. That was my process.
Yeah, we got you back. So I think there's a bit of an in and out happening between audio. So what? So you were basically watching. You learned. So what happens? Like, how did you learn EQ, for example? How did you learn to do an EQ on a track? How would that have come about? Yeah, I can hear you now. See, even if the video doesn't play, it's okay. As long as I can hear you, that's very important for everybody else as well. That's pretty okay.
I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello. Right. So, Benny, we'll jump to how did the iconic Dil Chahta Hai happen to you?
How did it happen to me?
Yeah. How did it
I
happen
guess
to
I
you?
was lucky because these guys, Shankar and Loy, were just finishing off Mission Kashmir. And they were recording in 4D studios. And in one room, they
Right,
were
40.
finishing off Mission Kashmir, which they were in the mix stage, which Shantanu was doing. And they had to start Dil Chahta Hai.
Okay.
So Shantanu was busy with that mix. So they said, like, Sunai, please come in for these recordings. And that's how Dil Chahta Hai actually came to me as a project. That was my first major project, I would say. And what a project that.
And absolutely. I mean, when it came out, it was just refreshing in terms of composition, songs, arrangement, the recording of the instruments, the mix, everything just stood out incredibly when it first came out. I think everybody agrees that it was a milestone album in terms of the Indian music
Yeah.
industry, and you were a huge part of it that was behind it. And do you remember we discussed this once that why does Dil Chata Hai sounds the way it does? And you had mentioned a very interesting thing that you were part of that project from start to end,
Yeah, yes.
right?
I
So, do you think that was one of the contributing reasons for the albums, the way it sounds?
As far as Dil Chahta Hai is concerned, definitely it is. I would say that it does have substantial bearing on the way it eventually sounded like, because the thing is that I was present when they were having all their discussions, creative discussions, topics about, like, what kind of sound they want to get, even just amongst themselves, no, even which did not involve me.
Okay.
So so I was kind of clued in, and my wavelength was kind of totally in phase with them. So
Right.
there was almost no single point in time during the entire recording of the album where they said, like, "Oh, I don't like the way this sounds. Let's try something else." So much. It just came together organically, it was. I felt like I was part of the whole creation of that. I was a part of that. So definitely, yes, my being involved from them made a big difference.
So, back to that question again. So, you think being a part of a recording project from the start, where you're also the recording engineer, and finally you're also the mixing engineer, because since you know the project backwards, inside out, you know exactly what has been tracked and how it has been tracked. So obviously that goes towards doing a better job in the mix. Is that what you feel?
I would say yes, but that's not always true. Sometimes a producer might want to get somebody else's a completely different perspective on it. Now, it's really dependent on the composer or the producer, whoever's in charge of the recording. Is like, do I want to is my engineer who's working on it now, has he got the sound that I want? If he's sure of that, then yes, for sure. But if the guy says, like, I actually want a different look or a different sound, I say, okay, how about if I call KJ? Benny's done all this tracking. Let's see what KJ can bring to the table. And maybe KJ will do a completely, you'll approach it in a different way, and maybe it'll be fantastic. So it's really dependent on, I wouldn't say that you or me would do a better or a worse job. It would be a different.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It would be different in terms of the sound and the texture. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just what you're texturally, sonically looking for.
Exactly.
That would be different, of course. Okay, so that's, you think it's the call of the music director and the producer. They are the ones who take that call.
I would say so.
Right. Okay. So, Benny, you, in your opinion, what would be like your go-to gear, which you would like, one hardware and like maybe one or two plugins, which you think really help you get to something which you want to do in your sound fast, efficient, and quickly get in there. So what would be that piece of hardware, if it is, or what would be that piece of plugin or 2-3 plugins which combination gets you going very quickly to where you want to go?
If I had the option of analog, then I would like to have like a really good console, so that front end, so the microphone and a preamp. Now, it could be a console preamp, it could be a standalone preamp, whichever one of those. Like a good mic, good front end. That would be the starting point. And of course, like see, today we are doing mostly everything is being mixed in the box, and there's nothing says that you can't bring do a fantastic job totally in the box. Right? So I would say like plugins wise, I've been partial to the Slate plugins.
Steven Slate plugins, okay.
Lately, I have also been using some of the waves, not the full collection, but like some like Shep's omni-channel and a couple of the CLA compressors. These are the things that I like to use. I will use other stuff which is more like effecty kind of things. Like the Sound Toys collection, they've got some amazing plugins there for like warping your tones, tone shaping. But
tone shaping stuff, yeah.
That's kind of how I would go about it. But I am not a fan of using 20,000 plugins. I will find a few of them, learn how they work, and use them to death till I find something else.
Okay. I was on a chat with Ashish Manchanda, and we discussed that he was also asking me same thing about plugins, and my response to that was that you, for basic stuff like whether it's a compressor or a basic EQ, as an engineer you end up finding the ones that you like for the tone that they give you, and in your mind you're very quick. Okay, if I want a little saturation and a little edgy one, I'll go for this one, whether it's a compressor or an EQ. If I want a more silky top, I know which one to go to. So those you keep falling back to the regular ones that you keep going back to. But the ones which you just mentioned were the ones where you want to change the shape of sound, the ones where you want to mangle or stretch and push the sound. Those are the ones we end up experimenting with a lot new ones as they come in. Is that right? Is that the way with you as well?
Yeah, but I don't do that so much with compressors and stuff. I will be doing it with, how do you describe, say, the Sound Toys?
Right, that's what I mean. The ones which you mangle, you use to mangle the sound, or you mean to change the tonality, change the total shape of the sound. That's something which you would experiment with a lot of new ones which might come.
Yeah, stuff like Sound Toys does that decapitator, which is like a kind of a clipper, or the crystallizer. Those or altar boy, little altar boy, the pitch and comment.
Yeah.
So those do interesting things to from a more from a production from a production standpoint rather than mixing alone.
Right. Okay. Somebody just asked, do you prefer a same plugin chain for every time? Like the same, if it's a vocal, would you prefer the same thing again and again, the same combination of plugins? Or does that change?
Changes. I might start with a familiar chain, but sometimes very often it does not work for me. So I will change it around. Like even when I'm using, let's say, the Chef's omni-channel, I will not always have the modules in the order that it opens up with. I will move them around until I find, okay, this order works better for me. So
okay. Again, now you just mentioned a very interesting thing with the Andrew Shep's omni-channel. Now here is a plugin which is like a channel strip. I mean, it's like a strip of a console which has the mic pre right down to the output filter and everything in between. So that's one plugin which kind of has all that. Versus you make your own kind of a channel strip with a different EQ and a different compressor and a different sound shaper of your own. So which one do you prefer? Do you prefer all in one tonality wise having the same one or an SSL channel strip, or would you rather make your own channel strip? Which works for you better?
I don't really have a preference, although I lean towards. I was watching that interview with Andrew Sheps the other day.
Andrew Sheps, yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
With him, like where he said, he wants to be able to see everything all in one window, rather than having to keep jumping between things. I lean towards that approach also. So which is why with that omni-channel came out, I said, oh, this is something that works for me. Prior to that, I was using the straight, which where you can drop modules in and out, and which
BMR, virtual mix rack.
So that's also similar. Where you have everything pretty much there in front of you. So so like between the Slate and Shep's omni-channel, right now, this is what.
That's almost. I remember in the early days of Pro Tools, Ed Sridhar used to do that. So whenever he opened a session, he would actually have the Focusrite compressor on all the tracks, whether he would want that later or not, and he would have the Focusrite Red EQ on all across the track. So he almost actually converted the digital platform into like an analog console kind of a platform. So all those plugins were same across, and they would always be there for him to just dive in, click in, rather than putting it in, instantiating it. He would have it ready so that, and they were the same tone. So that's the way he worked, bringing the analog console kind of concept back into the digital world. Some people still do that, and it works for them. Why not? So you get the same tonality of sound as if you were working through an SSL or Neat console, so to speak.
Yeah, but I don't do that. Right. I don't do that. I mean, there are when I'm mixing. I wait. I will listen to stuff before I decide I want to even process. Like there are a number of in my mixes you'll find there are a number of channels which have got not a single plugin on them. Because if it sounds good, the way it is, why fool around with it?
Something there.
I mean, unless you really want to twist something. But if I'm going to say for a pure tone, then leave it the way it is, right?
Right. I think this guy Parthak Vipul just asked you that question and you answered it because he said, do you process every track in the mix dynamically? So you just answered. Sometimes you just leave a track. If it's recorded well, you just kind of have to fade. I mean, you have to just set the volume and the balance of it rather than sonically do something to it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, going back to the whole thing which you said at the beginning, it's all about how you track it, how you record it, and that kind of has a huge bearing on how you end up mixing it, right?
Yeah. I mean, if the source is top quality, I mean, what do you really need to do? How much EQ do you actually need to apply? If it sounds great out of the box, I mean, fantastic. Then you can think creatively rather than like technically. Oh, okay, I need to use this because I need some saturation and all that. Maybe it just sounds great the way it is.
Okay. Benny, you also work a lot and you work with some of the really top-notch artists in the live circuit. I don't want to go into the entire detail of the live circuit as such, because it's a totally different ball game and it's a totally different mindset. And I think maybe that requires another chat just talking about live on its own. But since you straddle both, I mean, I am just trying to get an idea as to what kind of uh, gives you a bigger kick, being in the studio recording or doing a live gig with talented musicians. You've done work with Zakir Bhai, you've done work with Shankar Hassan Loy, Kailasa also you're doing some really good top-notch artists. So that versus studio, what kind of gets your ball afloat, so to
Oh
speak?
man, this is a very tough question to answer. I, I love both sides, and it's been a while. It's
All
been a
right.
while since I've been in a studio, like recording, and I'm kind of missing it. I'm kind of missing it. Doing the live circuit is great fun. I mean, you're on the ball all the time. You have to be alert all the time.
All the time.
The adrenaline. It's a rush, but there is a different kind of excitement to sweating blood to get that sound that you look.
True, I agree. Okay, so that being said, what is the reason I was asking you that question was to also lead to the next one, which is when we do live shows, we are always trying to get the signal to noise ratio, and before feedback, the gain structure is very critical when you're on stage, right? So that you can get the best signal strength possible. So that is not there in the studio. That problem is just not there in the studio. So what ends up happening in the live is that we get people playing just like 1 inch away from the mic, which means for engineers, it's a huge bunch of proximity effect which is coming into play when you do something live, and we end up kind of taking care of that in the mixer part of it. Now, what happens in the studio? Does that same thing also happen in the studio that we end up doing better close miking because even as musicians they are used to doing that? How have you seen that happening for you?
With vocalists for sure, because yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, they tend to have this habit of coming close to the mic because that is something that they've been doing on stage, and they think that that's how you should do it for in the studio as well.
Right.
So it's a difficult thing. You have to talk them through the process. I don't want such an in-your-face kind of a sound. You need to step back an inch or so. It's always iterative. They'll start off listening to you, then they slowly they'll start moving forward. Then you have to stop saying, "Sir, could you please move back an inch? I'm getting this problem." You have to work. You have to work with that. Once you work with the singers a few times, then they understand what you're looking for. But if it's a new vocalist or somebody you've never worked with before, then you got to
Then you
a
have
bit of an education that is involved over there. But when it comes to with instruments, it's not so much of an issue. It's mostly this issue really happens mainly with vocalists.
And especially since now a lot of people are doing recording work in their home studios, so you must be getting tracks which has a whole bunch of that.
Sorry,
do you?
Sorry, what is that?
Because a lot of people are now recording at home. Do you get that thing a lot in your tracks?
Oh yeah. In fact, I've just the one track has just gone up on YouTube a few days ago. It's called United We Fight.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah, I heard that. Very nice. Yeah, I heard that.
All those vocals were recorded at home on a phone.
Most of them
on iPads and stuff like that. So some of the program stuff obviously was straight program converted to audio, but all the other live stuff, the tabla, flute, they all recorded on iPads and phones and stuff like that. So it was a bit challenging to get the sound reasonably good. I think it turned out pretty good. I don't know.
No, it sounded good. I also heard it. I remember we shared it on the group as well. I heard it. It sounded full. It sounded robust. I don't think at any point you felt that this was not recorded in a studio with everybody being there. So I think a huge part of that credit goes to you as a mix engineer who has factored all that in and compensated for all those things which might have come your way. And I realize how much work there is because we also get all of us engineers get so many tracks sometimes which really do not meet up to a good quality in terms of recording, but musically some of them are really good, so you don't want to throw it away. So yeah, huge applause to you guys for doing it. So somebody is asking, how is miking technique for classical instruments developed in India? How is that different from recording a film song, let's say? So do you have a different approach in case you have to record something which is more classical or semi-classical, like a ghazal album versus a film album? Would your tracking, first and foremost, the tracking and then the mixing, your mindset, would that change a lot?
Not from technical standpoint of what is required for a recording. You might use definitely you choose your mic selections might be different, but
Right.
by and large the fundamentals are the same, right? There's no difference. But putting it together, it's a different genre of music, so you have to record it with the genre of music in mind. I mean, it's not heavy metal, so you can't be recording it like you would record a heavy metal band, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
Of course.
you don't necessarily need to have such close miking where it's not required. Like, you choose your mics accordingly. I mean, you wouldn't be using the same, like for instance, let's take an example. For tabla, my mics of my choice would be, say, the Telefunken M60 or the Neumann KM184 or even the Shure SM81. And then, of course, our stalwart SM50, 57 is always there to but I would prefer to go for some of those small diaphragm condensers rather than, like a dynamic for the tabla. But I don't mind.
That's it. Sorry,
I wouldn't mic it close. We're talking about studio, right? We're talking about studios. I would take it.
Right, I'm talking about studios. Right.
But there are other ways to.
Interesting, because
sorry. There's another way. I mean, like one thing that I observed Vishwadeep do a long time ago. He used the 414 on that, and what an incredible sound he got. But it was recorded using a platform, so that the resonance of that platform also was captured. So those instruments really sounded amazing. But if it is just a solo instrument, yeah, like a solo tabla, small diaphragm condenser, fantastic.
Okay, that was I was coming to, because you mentioned a small diaphragm condenser mic invariably, or a dynamic with a small condenser. While a lot of people end up wanting to use a little large condenser for a tabla just to get the roundness of the baya in there. So you think you managed to achieve that with a small condenser? You have no issue with that low end being captured?
Yeah, well, it's really, actually that I should qualify that. It really depends on the musician, the player. If you've got like let's say you've got a Zakir Hussain, then a small diaphragm is what you need, because he knows what to do, right?
Right. Exactly.
Even a Satyajit Talwalkar, who's a brilliant tabla player. He's not yet a Zakir Hussain, but I think he's getting there. So with him also, I would like to use that. But there might be other tabla players who are not quite as accomplished, and so they've not yet learned how to harness the tonality of their instrument. So maybe
their experience is not there as yet. Yeah.
So it really.
And I totally buy that, and I'll share one quick small experience with Zakir Bhai on that, and I'm sure you also have some stories where he came in for a recording for Shivamani, and he sat in the studio. He figured out, okay, no matra ka gana. He said, yeah, honey, no matra ka. Okay. Tabla लगा दिया है, तो Zakir Bhai कौन सा माइक लगाएं? कोई भी. अच्छा. Zakir Bhai कितनी दूर रखें? कहीं भी. So like. For that man, it does not matter what mic, what distance, what you are, because he knows in his head what is the sound that he's looking for, and he will adjust his tabla accordingly, and he will play it accordingly to give you the sound that he has it in his head. That's it, period. So, so players like that, musicians like that, of course, and since you worked with those guys, you are spoiled, because they just bring that tonality and sonic thing to the table without you having to do much work on it.
Absolutely. And and this my involvement with Zakir Bhai, like you were saying, I have to thank Mujib for that because I used to hang out with him when he was doing the Balsi concerts. And he said, listen, why don't you
Right.
also come in and work on the show? So we used to sit at the FOH console. One half was his, one half was mine. This was before we had we had two desks in the earlier days. Like so, one half I was handling one half.
Right.
So imagine two engineers on one console. Not It's usually a recipe for disaster, but we kind of managed it. And I learned a lot about working with
Yeah.
classical stuff
Mujib,
from
yes.
Mujib. I mean, he's a great source of, everybody
Of course.
knows,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
practically wrote the book.
Right, right. That man knows that. So you have a consultation company with Mujib where you guys do consultancy work for audio. Is that what
Well,
it is?
it's more of an acoustical consultancy. We are building studios
Okay.
but we've been doing like small studio, nothing, no major large facilities. We've been like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
small studios. We've done quite a few bandwagon studios in South Bombay. That's owned by Zubin Balaporia and Ronnie Desai.
Zubin, yes,
A number of
yes, yes,
studios
yes.
for Ronnie Desai. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's cool. So again, what you just reiterated was the same thing which you did earlier when you started your career watching Shantanu Udlikar work in
Yeah.
music room. And you are here, you are working with Mujib, watching him work in terms of the classical music segment. And you are basically grabbing all that information and putting it to use for yourself later on. And I think that's a huge part of what most engineers go through in the learning process, watching, observing, assimilating, and putting it to use. Would you say that would be
Absolutely. In
correct?
fact, I would encourage people to observe what another engineer is doing. I mean, if you like what he is doing, you try to learn what he has done and apply it in your context. Obviously, you can never copy the other engineer. You will never make something sound
Sure.
like what the other person did. Like, okay, there's a bit of a little story here for Dil Chahta Hai related to this. Is that where at the time when we were
Right.
coming to the end of the recording and we started thinking about mix and stuff, Shankar came to me and said, listen, I wanted to make it sound like Rahman's mixes. I said, okay. I said, then Shankar, if that's what you want, then really you should be talking to Sridhar. Let him do it. So,
Right.
he was a bit taken aback. I said, like, no, don't, I'm not, please don't misunderstand. I'm not feeling bad about this. But if that's the sound you want, then that's the guy you should talk to because I do it my way. I can't do it the way Sridhar does it. Sridhar does it the way Sridhar does it. So he said, okay, I get your point.
Right.
Go for it.
Yeah, but that's Shankar. You see, Shankar has that in him to realize what you're saying and where you're coming from, and then figure it out and say, okay, I realize what I was saying, go ahead with it. So
Yeah.
that's Shankar. You
Yeah,
have
of
to
course.
give him that.
He's
That's
very
Shankar.
open-minded that way. Like, that's one of the great things about working with these three guys. I mean, I I was able to actually give inputs slightly on the musical side of things as well. I mean, for instance, like when we were recording Tanhai, uh, we had recorded a bunch. Like Taufik had come in and recorded a bunch of loops on with different percussion instruments, and they gone out to
Right.
have some chai post that. So I was still in the studio. I sat and I kind of just I was cleaning them up and I made a few sample arrangements. And when they came, I played it for them.
All right.
And Shankar said, hey, I like that. Let's keep that. This part
Okay.
will change like this. So, I had some little bit of input into the actual arrangement of some of the rhythm parts. So, they're open to that, so which is fantastic. At least, then I don't feel like I'm just there pushing buttons.
I agree. I totally subscribe to that, that most engineers are creative people. It's not a technical job. And I keep saying that again and again. It's a
Absolutely.
creative job. And you end up being a part of an arranger, producer, music producer kind of role. Inadvertently, you're doing that because you are muting parts, you're lining things up, you are pushing things in a copy pasting in another place. So you are actually end up doing it. And your vision, if it's in sync with, like you said earlier, with the music director, it really helps to bring out the project. It really does help on that. I do agree. Definitely on that. So do you have a reference when you go in for a mix? Like when you're going to start a project, let's say today you're doing a ghazal album, and within 2 weeks maybe you're doing like a Dil Chahta Hai kind of a film Bollywood album. So before you start a project, do the clients give you a reference? I'm looking at, like, of course, he said I want a Rahman mix, but that was something else. But do you have a reference in your mind? Like, I want to, what I'm hearing, I'd like to take it in this direction before you start, or how does that work for you?
I will ask for a reference. Okay, so let's say I'm only mixing, right, and I'm not been part of the.
Right.
If I've not been part of
The recording process.
then I will ask for their final rough mixes. I'll say, like, give me your rough mixes, because then I get some ideas as to, like, of how they want certain things to be, particularly vocal, right? That's the most important thing in a Bollywood project, right? So I will ask for those references. Sometimes if I don't get it, I will say, okay, can you give me a reference? It could be an already released track, a Western pop track. It could be another Hindi song, whatever, in the same genre. So then I will use that as kind of a reference. A lot of the time I don't get the reference at all. So then I mix it. I listen to what they have sent me, and I will hear something in my head and I will present that. I would say 90% of the time when that has happened, they've gone with what I've eventually presented. But a couple of times they've been like, actually, maybe we should try this and maybe we should try that. Work on the thing a little bit. And a few times it's happened.
Okay. Hi, Ashish. Chandra is here as well, hearing you talk. So somebody's written, how do you judge your mixes and when do you know you're done?
How do I judge?
Yeah, I also want to hear that.
How do I judge my mixes? Oh, that's a tough one. I try not to judge my mixes. I will try to get somebody like a KJ Singh to help me tell me whether the mix is good.
Judge it.
Tell me whether it's good or not. But
so I think what he meant to ask was, like, how do you say, yeah, I'm happy with this? How do you come to that point when you say, yeah, this is it, and that's it, I'm done. Like, this is what I was looking for. How does that happen to you? When does that happen?
See, like I said, like, I have a picture in my head or a sound in my head of what I wanted that song to sound like. If I think I've reached that, then I'll say, okay, this is where I will stop now and make a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, if I hear it again tomorrow, I'll say, okay, I can change this. I'm always ready to change, work on something in the mix. I'm never really sure that I'm actually finished until they say, okay, no, we have to send it. I like this, now stop.
Right.
So I wait for the client to tell me, okay, now, okay, we're good.
Yeah. I quote a line from what George Massenburg once said, and he is being quoted widely on this. He said, an engineer never finishes a mix. It's taken away from him.
Exactly.
They just come and take it away. That's when you finish it. So good. So what kind of, do you have like a favorite monitor, or do you have a headphone that you check your mix on? How do you cross-reference your mix these days with so many platforms, including particularly the mobile phone platform is so widely used right now with youngsters and other people now. So what happens? You have a huge monitor which is there in the studio, like you're in Yashraj or some other studio which has got big pair of monitors, and then you have to factor in all the playback devices. How does that work for you? How do you kind of wrap your head around that?
Well, I will make sure that I have a mix on a pair of monitors that I know. So invariably it'll be a pair of near fields. I used to work on the Dynaudio BM6 actives until they were stolen. And my substitute, I went around looking for, I tried a number of different monitors from Focal, from KRK, like a number of different brands, even including General. And eventually, Price also played a bit of part in it.
Right.
I can't believe what the Sonodyne monitors did for me.
Which model did you use? The 3-way or the 2-way?
And
yes, the 2-ways.
Yeah,
okay.
SM100s.
Right.
And I'm currently using the SRP 500s. And they're just brilliant. I don't feel the loss of my BM6s anymore. I mean, I seamlessly moved it from this to that. I was like, wow, I'm so happy with this. I mean, and Anindo has been kind enough to give me a pair. So I didn't.
I'm I have to agree with you there. Anindo, I think, made a fabulous piece of equipment there, and I think he's lent me the first ever pair which didn't even have a serial number on them from
Yeah.
their factory to try the SM100. They didn't have a serial number, and some things were still hanging out. The screws were not there. It was like a prototype, but he had just got it. Yeah. And I remember first turning them on, and I'm going, holy
Exactly.
shit, these are big monsters. You know, like they're small, but they packed
They
a
do.
punch. And it just, so I called him and I said, wow, what the hell did you guys do, man? This is really amazing. So till finally, it just dropped. I mean, in the sense, it just died on me because I was just abusing it so much. I was just using it so much that it just died on me. I had to give them back to him. So yeah, I agree. There some great piece of work by the Anindo and his guys there,
Yeah.
Sonodyne. Really good work, guys. So you're using the Sonodynes right now, and you are very happy with how they translate.
I love them. I love them. I want to.
Oh. What about headphones? Do you check on headphones?
I have a pair of Sennheiser HD25s, the Pro, which I find those are the closest to sounding to like the tonality of a studio monitor. So, because I find a lot of headphones are like, they've got these weird hi-fi EQs, like smiley face, like, exaggerated bottom end or too much top end, that. So I'm quite happy with these. They're very uncomfortable for long-term usage. So I only use them as reference because they're over the years. They're not around the years. What they call them on the year. So I use them for reference mainly, and I find them they're a really good reference. And then for say phones and all that, I'll convert to an MP3 and high-res MP3 and put it onto my phone and listen to that and see like how things are translating. This is generally. I try not to confuse myself with too many reference points.
Okay, yeah,
But
fair
this
enough. That does help.
we used to use Ehsan's car.
I was just going to ask you that. Do you actually listen to it in a car? I was just going to ask you that. What car did he have?
Zen. He had a Maruti Zen. He had
Oh, Maruti Zen. Okay.
JBL car audio system with a sub. So it was mind blowing. We used to ride into the studio together listening to Van Halen, and we would go back listening to Dil Chahta Hai.
I remember doing that with AR as well sometimes. We'd be mixing very late in the night into early morning before his morning prayers, and we would just finish and he'd say, okay, those are the days of CD. So he'd say, okay, burn a quick CD right now. And we would get into his car, and at let's say 5 in the morning, we are driving around Chennai early morning and listening to the mix, and sometimes really loud because he just wants to crank it and see will it crap out or not. So we are just listening to this loud music, and some of the passerbys who actually are morning walkers are just kind of looking at us saying, who are these guys who are listening to this loud music early at 5 in the morning? But yeah, we heard music in the car and we would come back and make notes, and I would take voice notes what he said. Yeah, that is good. This is changed. So yeah, listening in a car has been such a huge part of most engineers' lives. So yeah, I was just going to ask you that and you answered. So Dil Chahta Hai was the Maruti Zen.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that it should be a red Maruti Zen and not any other color for it to sound like that. Had it been a different color, it would have been something else.
It would have made a difference to the sound, you mean?
And by the way, about another little piece of trivia here. Dil Chahta Hai, the title track, is my final rough mix.
Oh, how did that happen?
So my process.
What happened there?
While if I'm recording a project, is every day at the end of the day, everybody goes home. I stay back for a little longer, clean up the tracks, and I set up like a rough mix for the next day, so that we know, okay, we've got all this done. So my mixes are pretty much iterative. So by the time we've reached the end of the thing, we've actually almost got a final mix. When I did my
of
think we all, myself included, said like, no, this one sounds better. So
Okay, so that's a rough mix
yeah,
that you did. Wow, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember hearing a difference between the title track or any of the other tracks to that extent that was a rough mix and that was a final mix. So you must be doing a damn good job of doing a rough mixes, Benny.
when I get a chance, when I'm given,
No, because I can't make out the difference. Obviously, there's something good going on there that you're doing on that account. So, Benny, we have, I think, about 5 minutes or so left before I think Instagram kicks us out. So, I'm just going to ask you a few quick things which people might want to know about Benny. So Benny, who's your favorite band or artist that you really like and listen to a lot?
ever, any kind of.
I mean, it could be anywhere. It could doesn't have to be Indian or what you've recorded, but just an artist who you really like the music and you listen to a lot. The Who.
And
Okay. Any particular album or just the whole of Who?
they're the ones that changed my life. So obviously they have to. But there are a number of other bands, but like Steely Dan is one of them. There's another one. Yeah.
Do you find the bands that you listen to a lot and the music you listen to a lot, their kind of influence starts creeping into the kind of work that you're doing and the mixes that you're doing?
Not so much the work that I'm doing, but definitely has a big influence on the kind of sounds that I try to.
Sound that you're creating. Okay. The sonic template that you're creating, that has some imprint of their what you're listening to, right?
After listening to a couple of albums mixed by Elliot Shiner, I started thinking I tried to think like him when I was working on the next album. You know, the kind of tonalities that you get. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Tonality. Okay. What would be your favorite color that you really like? What's your favorite?
Blue.
Blue. Okay, we have two in a row, guys. We had Avinashji saying light blue. We have Benny who's saying blue. So we have 2:0 on blue right now. We'll see how the other guys go.
Maybe I like the blues.
You like the blue? Good. Do you have something like mood lighting for the studio when you work or mix or something, or does it matter to you what the lights are like?
It doesn't really. I don't have any mood lighting, but it should not be too bright. That's all.
Okay, you don't want too bright lights staring at you. Okay, your favorite food, what would be that? I mean, if you were given a choice, just pick any cuisine out of the world. Which would the one you would go for?
Always.
Or any kind of Indian food, as long as it's Indian.
I mean, if you're saying if I'm given a choice of only one, then I would pick Boston.
Yeah. Indian food, right? Any particular thing in Indian food which just gets your fancy every time?
So many, but it's day to day it varies. Yeah, one day it's like butter chicken, another day it's like some Kerala food. You know, I like all kinds of Indian food, man. You know, all.
Boss, we are so blessed to be in a country which gives us so many options of cuisines in just one country, man. It is just so beautiful. No doubt about that. Okay. And any of the new young engineers whose work you really like? I mean, in the sense that any of the new kids you heard on the block, you heard their stuff and you said, wow, this guy is doing something amazing. Some of the new kids. Any one or two or whoever you have thought of, you heard?
The guys at Island City Studios, they've been producing some really amazing stuff. There's the boy Asher there. There's another guy, Aditya something. I can't offhand. I cannot remember.
Okay.
So like some of the work that's coming out of Island City is like really good. I mean, I'm waiting for the time when I can mix a track at Island City Studios. I haven't yet had the chance.
Yeah, okay. I think they're open to outside engineers coming and mixing. JJ, I think informed me that once. So they do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We are still just about a minute away. What do you think is going to be the future of mixing and working as an engineer now with this lockdown being thrown open, but still people are going to be wary and cautious in terms of being together. So what is your take on that?
It's such a new kind of thing. With the guidelines and the best practices are still being worked out. I think a lot of Of course, obviously, in the box is going to be the norm. But I think it's possible
main.
that a lot of mixes will happen at home. I mean, it might be worthwhile for engineers to have good quality home setups so that if you can't get to the studio, you can turn out like a good mix at home. I mean, that United We Fight I did in my bedroom. Come on. I don't think it sounds too bad. It sounds pretty decent.